Donald Trump's own director of CDC told us that wearing a mask is the single most important step we can take to curb this virus. Here's what he said. He said, I might go so far as to say that this face mask, and he held up a face mask, not this one, is more guaranteed to protect me against COVID than when I take a COVID vaccine, end of quote. You know, I spoke with the experts today about additional steps we can take to prevent needless deaths and suffering between now and a universal vaccine being made available. Uniform national guidelines, they said, and standards on social distancing that can be applied to, in particular circumstances of states and communities based on their particular circumstance. More effective approaches on testing and tracing. If we do these things between now and January, we could save even more lives. Last night, Donald Trump indicated he has no interest in doing these things. Folks, the president's first responsibility is to protect the American people, and he won't. That's utterly disqualifying. I also spoke with the experts this morning about the paramount importance of preparing now for swift, organized, and free distribution of a safe and effective COVID-19 vaccine when it arrives. And I'm profoundly grateful to the scientists and the researchers working tirelessly to ensure that a safe and effective vaccine becomes a reality as soon as possible. These scientists carry the hopes of our nation, our entire nation, and the entire world. And when their work comes to fruition, and it will, there will be no doubt it will save lives. But scientific breakthroughs don't care about calendars any more than the virus does. They certainly don't adhere to election cycles. And their timing, their approval, and their distribution should never, ever be distorted by political considerations. They should be determined by science and safety alone. A vaccine would offer a way back to normalcy and a path toward better days for all of us, not only here but around the world. But it's not going to happen overnight. And once we have it, it's going to take months to distribute it to the entire population. I'm more hopeful than ever in the power of science to get us there. But one thing is certain. We can't allow politics to interfere with the vaccine in any way. Americans have had to endure President Trump's incompetence and dishonesty when it comes to testing and personal protective equipment. We can't afford to repeat those fiascos when it comes to a vaccine, when it occurs. The stakes are too high. American families have already suffered and sacrificed too much. So let me be clear. I trust vaccines, I trust scientists, but I don't trust Donald Trump. And at this moment, the American people can't either.
And that is exactly how you sum up this entire situation, wherein Trump is trying to shoehorn through a vaccine that would just so happen to become available right before Election Day. The point that Biden made is a point worth repeating, that you should trust vaccines, you should trust scientists, but you simply cannot trust Donald Trump. And in case the optics of a vaccine magically appearing right before the election aren't enough to convince you of what a scam Trump is trying to run, consider that Trump has actually rebuked the director of the CDC for admitting that a vaccine likely wouldn't be available to the general public until mid to late next year.
But then you said that the vaccine for the general public likely would not be available until probably next summer, maybe even early fall. Are you comfortable with that timeline?
No, I think he made a mistake when he said that. It's just incorrect information. And I called him, and he didn't tell me that, and I think he got the message, maybe confused, maybe it was stated incorrectly. No, we're ready to go immediately.
And of course that can't be right, because how could you possibly have a vaccine that Trump can't exploit for his own re-election? And then Trump and Republicans have the audacity to claim that Democrats are being anti-vaxxers for not breathlessly praising an impending vaccine that's meant solely as a political prop. As if we can't tell the difference while watching Trump bend federal agencies to his will in real time and silence epidemiologists like Dr. Fauci, that this is all being done in service of his re-election. The fact is that the left wants a vaccine just as much as the right, but the only way that people are going to actually take it is if we trust that the process is being carried out safely, and the way that Donald Trump is carrying this out has nothing to do with safety and everything to do with politics. And yet, in contrast to yet more blatant politicizing of our public health agencies, Joe Biden has been clear throughout this entire process what his stance on vaccines is if he's elected president. First and foremost, that the process should be based on science and not arbitrary election dates. He would also invest $25 billion into the manufacturing and distribution of vaccines in order to guarantee equal access to all Americans. Contrast that with Trump, who routinely discounts the citizenship of anyone not living in red states, or even his failure to contain a virus that's had a disproportionate impact on low-income Americans and people of color. Trump has made it abundantly clear that he prioritizes his own supporters, that he only serves them as president. Joe Biden isn't going to predicate your survival on your political affiliation. And beyond that, Biden has stressed 3 principles with regard to a vaccine. The first is independence, that scientists and public health experts alone should make decisions about a vaccine's safety and efficacy. The second is transparency, that all clinical data for a vaccine must be publicly released. And finally, the last is a public report, that FDA staff should generate a public report and be free to speak on their findings in public or before Congress, because this entire process should be about restoring our faith in government, not manipulating it for obvious political gain. So the point is this: Americans of every political persuasion want a vaccine, but just as important, we want to be able to trust that a vaccine is safe and effective. Right now, according to polling, only 39% of Americans would take a vaccine, and that is solely due to the fact that Trump has tainted this process. After 200,000 deaths, he's lost the faith of the American people. Contrast that with Biden's willingness to speak plainly to the American people about the virus, to tell the truth, to not knowingly mislead based on the political environment. And you have the person who will be able to see to it that the virus is contained and the American people are protected. While you're here, please subscribe to my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, where I take a deeper dive into the week's biggest stories and interview major players in the world of politics, like Kamala Harris, Adam Schiff, Katie Porter, Nancy Pelosi, Cory Booker, Eric Swalwell, and many more. Again, that's No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, available anywhere you listen to podcasts.